And what God did is he used two things. He used redemptive relationships in the body of Christ, and he used inner healing prayer to minister to the wounds in my soul.
Help us work this idea in. It didn't happen immediately. It happened almost incrementally. How have you seen the Spirit's power relevant to your own life and story? I remember when you shared at Purdue with a number of the campus ministers a cassette tape of you being at an event where some female speaker pointed you out, didn't know you from Eve. Can you comment on that and maybe this whole process of deliverance?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a common misconception that if I struggle with these kinds of desires and I pray and I ask God to take it away, boom, it'll just disappear. But really, that's not the way that progressive sanctification in the Christian life happens.
Mm-hmm.
With really, it's not that God can't instantly deliver us from things, and there have been things in my life where I have prayed and God has instantly done things, whether that be physical healing or even addictions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
When we find, if we use the example of somebody who's selfish and they say, God, just please help me not to be selfish or give me more patience. He doesn't just instantly transform your character and you go from being the most selfish person in the world to the most generous. There's usually a process because God is not as concerned with the finished product as we are. He loves to share the journey with us, and He is all about sanctification in spirit, soul, and body. And I think sometimes we don't realize that all three of those aspects of our being are a part of the discipleship process. So, anyway, as far as this story of I was at this church back in 1996 and had been wondering, am I born this way? Culture is telling me I'm born that way. You can't change. I had never met anybody that struggled with these desires. I just was really, I was going to counseling. I was trying to figure out what was behind these desires and not really experiencing much movement there. And this woman I had never met, she was from Texas. We called her Mama Carol because she was an older woman who loved to invest in college students. And she had this nice Texas Southern drawl. She was ministering one night. I was at a church and she came down off the platform and walked up to me and said, honey, what's your name? And I was freaking out. I said, Linda. And she said, oh, honey, you don't have to be afraid of me. Now, at that point, this was 1996, I had grown my hair out. I had some light makeup on that night. Nobody would have looked at me and wondered, is it a man? Is it a woman? Is that person struggling with their gender identity, their sexuality in any way? Nobody knew. And so she says, honey, the Lord wants you to know when you were born, He wanted another little girl and not a boy. And you don't have to try to be there like a boy, and went off for the next 9 minutes and read my mail. And things I had never told anybody, like when I would read the Old Testament, I would, look at these examples of women and think, wow, it really kind of stinks to be a woman in that culture. And they don't have many rights. And, it was just reinforcing this lie in my head that it's better to be a man than it is to be a woman. And so she was speaking and said, the Lord says, you think it's women, being a woman is a second class citizen. But I want you to know that when I was on earth, I uplifted women and gave examples of how Jesus uplifted the woman at the well, and how the first one to witness, to declare the good news of the resurrection was a woman in a day and time when a woman's testimony wouldn't be admitted in a court of law. And yet that message was entrusted to a woman. And it was just this message from God that I love women. I'm not against women, and you're not a second class citizen. And there are people who have told you, you have the call of God on your life, and there's people who've told you you can't do that because you're a woman. And I want you to know, when I call you, no man, woman, child, or devil can stop you. And it just on and on, all these things I had not verbalized to other people. And then at the end, she said, there's going to come a day when you look in the mirror and say, I like me instead of I hate me. And I couldn't fathom that because I just hated this body and what I was stuck in. So my brain was saying, no, 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 that's impossible. And my spirit was saying, yes, that's the Lord. It just resonated with my spirit. And so I came away from that experience feeling like God had just interrupted my existence. And I didn't know how, I didn't know when. I was doing everything I knew to do to fast and pray and read the Bible and see counselors and, do everything I could do to try to change my sexuality, and I couldn't
Hmm.
change my desires. But I knew that day the Lord planted a seed, a supernatural seed of faith in my heart that He was going to do this. And there would come a day I look in the mirror and say, I like me instead of I hate me. But I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew God was going to do that. Now, I didn't know that was going to be over the course of, another 9.5 years. And what God did is He used two things. He used redemptive relationships in the body of Christ, and He used inner healing prayer to minister to the wounds in my soul that were contributing to the lie that it's superior to be a man than a woman. Because there were events that happened in my life that skewed my thinking, skewed my perception of what it is to be a woman, made me think it's not safe to be a woman. I don't want to be a woman. And I needed God to heal my heart deeply, internally.
Hmm.
And I relational, redemptive relationships in the body of Christ where people would accept me as a woman among women, even though I was sporty and androgynous and whatever. I needed men that would affirm me as a woman distinct from, yet cherished and protected by men, to show me that it was safe and desirable to be a woman. And those things, it's just discipleship. It's a process. It takes time for the Lord to heal those wounds and to bring us to renew our mind and bring us into the fullness of who He created us to be.
Absolutely amazing.